Welcome back. Our next guest is a founder and executive director of Meet the Writers Incorporated, and she joins us today to speak about the work her organization is doing in collaboration with New York City schools to promote and encourage a love of reading and writing in students. Please welcome to the show, Michele Weisman. Michele, how are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Hey, Dr. Bobley, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, you're into helping the students get involved in reading and building up a love for it, because that's important. I think there's more books out now than ever before. And maybe it's just me, because every time I turn on the news or something, somebody has a book out that they're featuring. And but for students, I think, a lot of times we get into the electronics of things and the different games, I think, but reading is important.
It's really important. I work with schools to figure out the best author for the kids to meet and the best book to read, because many kids say, man, I'm not a reader, but most authors say, then you haven't found the right book to read. And so I work with schools to try to make that connection.
How do you come up with that choice of that book for that student?
So I read a lot of books, and I also meet a lot of authors, because I'm always looking for a great book and a great presenter, someone who's going to really talk about that book and really say, I got to read it. And then a diverse perspective. I'm really looking for an author, perhaps who looks like the students are going to read the book, because I want the kid to say, wow, you're telling my story, and I can really relate to that, and I want to read that book.
Yeah, something that's going to make them turn the page. I mean, sometimes you read something, it's like, oh, I don't want to turn this page. But something that's going to, let's go to the next level. Let's go to the next page. Let me read through. Let me find out what's going to happen. And that's how they want to read.
One of the things I ask the schools is, I say, you need to prepare. So the students need to read the book in advance of the author coming. And sometimes, most times they do. But sometimes they don't, and they meet the author, and then they go up to the author and say, oh man, I know I was supposed to prepare, but now I'm going to read your book. I heard about you and I heard about your story, and that really spoke to me. Like, I wasn't a reader before, but this is a book that I want to read. And that's really the goal, to work with the schools. So either the schools say, we're reading this book as part of our curriculum, or I could say, I've read this book, or I met this author and I think it would be a great fit. And so together we come up with something.
That's important. I would like to grab some of that and put it maybe on my website. I have a foundation called the Make the Grade Foundation for Education. And maybe if you can identify some of those special books for our students to want to read, I can post that for you.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I meant to grab some books, but I'm going to grab them right now.
Those are a few of the books that you've identified for students to read.
So last week, I had the author of I Am Alfonso Jones, Tony Medina, a Bronx native. He came to meet 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I was able to get a grant from the Maurice Sendak Foundation, where they gave Meet the Writers money to purchase books. So 400 students, teachers got a book, and the author, Tony Medina, was signed every book. So he's able to personalize every book. And it was really incredible. And what's incredible is I was able to connect them like we're talking. Yeah. So even though they couldn't touch each other, they could get pretty close. And Tony tells his story, and I feel like kids are very sensitive to whether an author is really like telling them the truth.
Yeah.
Tony told him, like, this is my story, and I'm going to tell you the truth about it.
And I'm sticking to it.
Yes. And the kids could ask them easy questions like, how many books have you written? And hard questions like, what did writing this do? How did it affect your life? I want to give a shout out actually to the Lit Bar, because the Lit Bar in the Bronx And the proprietor, Noel Santos, helped us get the books to the kids. And so that was just really fantastic.
And what made the youngsters want to gravitate toward that book? What intrigued them about that book?
What intrigued them about that book? Well, it's a graphic novel. So it's highly illustrated, seems easy to read.
Yeah.
But it is about a pretty serious topic, which is about a young man who was killed by a security guard because he was in a dressing room at a store and his hanger was misinterpreted as a gun. And it's a very compelling book at a very compelling time. And so I think the kids were pretty interested in it and wanted to talk to Tony. And so the author talked to every student. We had over 200 kids log on to a virtual Zoom meeting like this. And then afterwards, he met with a club at the school called the Racial Justice Club. And they dove in a little deeper and asked him questions. It was really wonderful.
That's great. And you pulled a few books from the bookshelf. What's the other one that?
Actually, I want to grab another one. 1 second.
Okay.
This week, I had this amazing opportunity.
That's a real bookshelf, by the way.
This is a real bookshelf. This is not a set. So, like your records, the real McCoy. Yeah. All the books that I've read, and always looking. Yeah. This week, I had the really wonderful privilege and opportunity to bring the authors of this book called Punching the Air. And the author, there are two authors who worked on this together. It's a novel in verse. And one author is award-winning author of other middle grade and young adult books called E.B. Zaboy. And the other author is Dr. Yusuf Salam, who is a prison reform activist and is one of the exonerated 5.
Wow, yeah.
Together, they both met with the students, and it was really tremendous. I mean, it was such a privilege to have them both on the screen with the students. And it's really the same thing. They talk about their story. I mean, one of the authors interviewed Yusuf Salam, but then the children had an opportunity to also ask their questions. And it's the same thing. They tell their story. I mean, this is the way it is for me. Like, this is the truth. One of the things Yusuf Salam says, all right, get knocked down 9 times, but get up 10. You know, he had just this great life advice to tell the stories and to share his story. So I felt really fortunate to be able, that Meet the Writers is able to connect current important writers with students in New York City. So it's been incredible.
Would you like to give a shout out to some of the writers that you're working with?
Well, to the ones I've already mentioned, yes. I've been able to work with authors who are local in New York City. Some authors like Elizabeth Acevedo and so many authors. I worked with Adam Gidwitz last week. I worked with Betsy Lewin, who wrote Click, Clack, Moo. So I'm looking for authors who can speak to pre-K to even college. And so who that is different for each grade. Yeah,
I like that. You know, I went into one classroom. This was in New Jersey. This was a few years back. I was supposed to sit down and sit in one of those little K chairs. And I began to read, and the teacher came over and said, no, don't read that. Let him read that. And a little 5-year-old read to us. And I was blown away because these kids are reading every day.
Yeah.
And they're not even in first grade yet. It was amazing. So I'm all for it. You know, when you're giving children an opportunity to pick up a book and read it and really get a head start on the game. You know, I think it's a wonderful thing. And thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Well, it's funny. Sometimes I say that the educators get very excited that the author's going to come to their school or going to meet them. And there's a lot of excitement before this happens. Yeah. And a lot of it happens sort of before we get there. And then there's things that happen once we leave.
Yeah.
So
there's a follow-up situation after you leave. You come back to the school at a later date.
Actually, Meet the
students can
Writers
look
does
forward
not
to
come back, but the school does. There's things that they do. Sometimes I was at a school where they read 2/3 of a book by an author,
Mhm.
and they wrote their own ending. And then they created a book that had all of the endings together. So there's often a lot of activities that follow the work that we do.
And is there a website where we can follow you?
Yes, please do at www.meetthewriters.org. I'm also on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and I'd love to meet more authors, more schools, and of course, more funders. But
there you go. Well, those are not only records back there. I have some of my own books that I've written. I have my 5th one that came out. But we'll speak at another time about some of those books. One is People to Know in Black History and Beyond. Indigenous people and people of all, backgrounds are in that in those 2 books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. But thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, helping to educate our youth. We really, really appreciate you. Michele Weisman, the founder and executive director of Meet the Writers Incorporated. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank our guests for joining us and you, our viewers, for tuning in and checking it all out. You can continue to follow us. Just go to BronxNet TV for continued coverage. Thank you for letting me share in this space and time with you. Always remember this: what you are is God's gift to you, and what you make of yourself is your gift to God. So choose your choice. Let your choice control the chooser. And remember, whether you say you can or you can't, either way, you're right. I'll catch you on the radio, 107.5 WBLS. Catch you another day, another way. Love you all. Peace.